Book of Ruth is a remarkable book, really an incredible sort of love story novella. Um, we really don't know who the author is. The canon placement is really phenomenal in Hebrew with regard to the English Bible. Yeah, the English Bible, the canon is simply set up patterned after both the Septuagint as well as sort of structured in genres, and so they placed it right after the Book of Judges because the opening lines is in the days of the judges judged, and so historically, the whoever ordered that perceived it to be a part of history. However, canonically, and historically, it's been understood as as a part of the writings. And in the writings, it is remarkable in that it is set right behind Proverbs 31. So the setting, the historical setting here is, and by the way, Proverbs 31 is the literature that highlights the virtuous woman. So Ruth, the Moabite, becomes a quintessential virtuous woman. Really a scandalous placement, if you really want to know the truth. Historical setting, period of the Judges. Persecutions led to famine. Elimelech and Naomi and their two sons move to Moab from Bethlehem to have food. They live there 10 years, and while they're there, their sons get married and their sons die, as does Elimelech. Elimelech's name means "my God is king," and he is ironically leaving the land where God is declared to be king. His line is now at the end of the book will be connected to David, and so this all has a very strong sense of Davidic flavor and covenant to it. Also, though, it reaches all the way back to Abraham. At the beginning of this book, you see the family that will be bound to David and celebrate both God and David as king, leaving the land. They have no land. There is no seed. There's no possibility for kids, and of course there is no blessing to the nations. And this is at the beginning of the book. All of this will be resolved by the end of the book, and in this incredible story, there's the mention of a kinsman redeemer, and that kinsman redeemer will bring about land, will bring about seed, sons, in fact the line of David, and will bring about blessing to the nations, with Ruth herself, the Moabite, being absorbed into Israel. The cycle of the book is moving from death to life, and so exile to restoration, and return. The return to Bethlehem is powerful in chapter 1. You only just get a brief introduction to Elimelech and his sons Machlon and Kilion, and then they're dead, they're gone, and Ruth and Naomi begin making their way back to the land. Rather Naomi does, and Naomi really is a powerful character in the book. In fact, the first time I read the book, I wondered at some point why the book maybe wasn't entitled Ruth and Naomi, because Naomi seems to be such a powerful sort of individual. She's at the very beginning of the book, sort of the matriarch of the family. She comes back into the land where she declares herself to be bitter, and her name should be called Marah. Her name should be called bitter. She is the one who orchestrates the connection between Ruth and Boaz. She's the one whom the women of the city bring Obed to nurse with, and after his birth, and is now the restorer, the return. Her life is now restored to her. She has a kinsman redeemer to watch over her, that kind of thing. So she's a really, really prominent figure in the book. But Ruth is given is clearly given the central characterization in how she's talked about. So, for example, in chapter 4, verse 15, Ruth is a restorer of life to Naomi. But this is the Mashuv Nefesh. This is the one who brings back from exile, and and she's a Gentile. She's the scandalous Proverbs 31 woman who is faithful and loyal to Naomi, even though she doesn't have to be. In contrast to her fellow sister and Orpah, not her blood sister, but sister-in-law Orpah, who returns back to her God and lands and to her country. But Ruth makes this bold statement, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Where you lodge, I will lodge. And your gods will be my God, and your people, my people. And it's a remarkable confession of conversion to some very real degree, walking away from all that is familiar, all that you, because of this family, this land, this God. So it's a really remarkable tale. Ruth and Boaz in the Field provides all the love story stuff that you'd ever want. You've got Boaz, who is comparable to David in his attention to the land and his also his nobility, his loyalty. His name is also the name of one of the temple columns, interestingly enough, in 1 Kings. You compare Ruth's journey also with Abraham, migration, and Rebecca. So Ruth looks like, to some degree, kind of a matriarch in some way. Ruth uses the law of the poor in order to go and pick leftover grain. In Leviticus 19, part of being holy is not picking all of your grain, not picking all of your grapes, but leaving a substantial a substantial amount so that the poor can have grain and wine as well and sustain themselves. And so she does this, and she ends up in Boaz's field. Boaz apparently notices her very, very quickly, tells the young men to stay away from her, and we find out that he is in fact one of Naomi's kinsman redeemers. He's a member of the family that can in fact marry Ruth and extend the line of Elimelech and whichever son Ruth was married to. And this is a real turning point in the story. This is the guy that can save Naomi, the Marah, the bitter one, and her very faithful, loyal companion, better than 10 sons, in fact, of Ruth. Ruth and Boaz, after this chance meeting in chapter 2, Naomi really bends over backwards to make sure Ruth is dolled up and ready to meet Boaz. And this time, Boaz is celebrating the harvest of the threshing floor. After harvest, all the men would go and they would eat and drink their fill, and they would lay down on the threshing floor and I'm sure some of them pass out and some of them just rest and sleep. It was a huge tradition to celebrate the harvest was over. And so Ruth went and lies down beside him, and Boaz designates that she is this virtuous woman, and he's very excited that she's picked him. The act, whatever it is, surely sort of implies more than just hey, do you want to be friends? But it also seems to not fall outside of the moral sort of code of Israel, and so what seems to be going on then is that Ruth has chosen Boaz as a husband. He's completely ecstatic about this. He says, "You could have chosen the younger guys, and you chose me." Very happy, but he also knows that there's one problem in the way. There is another a kinsman redeemer closer, and so he could actually claim Ruth. Now, the way Boaz handles this is very, very bright. He goes to the guy and he says, Elimelech's family has come back, and the land that they owned, you could redeem. So if you want to redeem it. And he goes, I'll do it. I mean, the guy was all about the land. Boaz, of course, is I'm sure somewhat interested in land, but he's really all about Ruth. And so after the guy says, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, he goes, well, I tell you what, this is the thing though, is you also have to take on Ruth, the Moabite. And she's come back with Naomi, so she would be your responsibility and furthering the family line in that way as well. And at that point, he backs away and he goes, no, I'm not interested. And so Boaz and Ruth ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after. And the conclusion of this is that you get everything that you didn't have at the beginning, right? You didn't have at the beginning land. They were just simply, vacillating between, Israel and Moab. And now you've got land. You've got secured land through the kinsman redeemer. You've got seed. You've got children. You've got, Obed being born and being in the line of David. So you've got covenant children. You've got blessing to the nations. You've got Ruth being absorbed into Israel, and yet still receiving and and being understood as Ruth the Moabite. She's even understood that way even in the New Testament when you see some of the genealogies there in Matthew and Luke. And so all the things promised back in Genesis 12 are now constituent of this book as well, in the folds of this fantastic little romance story. Hope you enjoyed it.